Welcome to another live Q&A session for worship leaders. My name is Jake Goslin, the creator of churchfront.com, helping you lead gospel-centered and tech-savvy worship. And I am joined by the one and only Spencer Cormody, who is the founder of leadingworshipwell.com and the Leading Worship Well Instagram account, which is helping you lead worship well, like it says. So I want to invite you to make sure you go check out all of our social accounts, whether it's Churchfront or Leading Worship Well. I'm going to include those down below in the description. Spencer has an amazing Instagram account where he's sharing daily Instagram tips all the time about leading worship. I love following his account and reading his daily posts. And then I have my YouTube channel here, obviously, Churchfront, where you can subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of our latest content to help you grow yourself and grow your church. And you can check out my blog. You can subscribe to the podcast. I'll put links to all those things below. And one more thing I wanted to have you check out is worshipleaderschool.com. It's a membership site for worship leaders where you can find all the essential training, advice, and support you need to plan and lead worship. So in this session of the live Q&A, well, we're going to do what it says it is. It's a live Q&A. So you guys ask the questions, whether they're by email or maybe you DM'd us on Instagram, or maybe you're logging on to this session right now, and you can actually ask us your questions in the chat, the comment box. So I already see you guys logging in. Let us know where you're logging in from. And here's kind of the agenda for today's session is we are going to go first from some of the questions that are emailed into us, and we'll answer about 2 email questions a time, and then in between we're going to answer the questions that are inside the live chat here here in YouTube. So I think that's all housekeeping stuff, right, Spencer? I think
sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we are set to go. We'll probably be planning on about 45 minutes here, hanging out, answering all these questions. Oh, if you're watching this video in the future, I'll put some quick navigation links below once we've seen all the questions, and we can mark them in the video so you can skip ahead to wherever it's convenient for you. So without further ado, let's go ahead, and I'm going to read question number 1. Actually, Spencer, you lead question number 1.
All right.
I've been talking enough already.
You've been talking way too much already.
So much.
We got people from Sweden. We got people from San Diego, from Ohio, Kentucky, Los Angeles. Lots of people. Welcome, everyone. Let's get into this first question. Jake, the first question, and this is more for you than for me because you're the tech guy. This is from Matthew. Matthew asks, what is the easiest way to get a good online mix when you only have one board and one sound tech?
Okay, my recommendation for this is on that sound console, you need to have either an auxiliary mix or a extra mix bus that you can use where maybe during part of your band rehearsal, that one sound tech can put on a pair of headphones, maybe hopefully they're really isolating headphones so they can really block out the room noise, and then they can really just provide a mix that would sound good for broadcast. And of course, it's more ideal to have like a separate studio. You're feeding it all the signals to a different room and having a broadcast studio. But I think a front of house audio engineer can get a decent rough mix that would sound pretty good for your online broadcast. But sometimes, too, I know people just take whatever the front of house mix and put that online as well, but it will just sound a little bit different. So that is my recommendation there.
Sounds good. Yeah, I could see us doing that. We just have one board with, it's not even a digital board. I assume it gets easier if you have a digital board. You can route things a little bit differently. But the way you're talking, you could do it even with an analog board, right? Just send things to an auxiliary channel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. And I was just noticing your mic was a lot hotter than mine, and I think Jared pointed that out to us. So I think I adjusted that, Jared. Let me know if that sounds better now. Hopefully it should balance this out.
I think he said Spencer is a lot hotter in comparison to Jake. That's
come on. Oh, come on. Mike. Spencer's Mike. Okay. That was great, though. All right, so, obviously let us know if you guys have any audio AV issues here as you're listening. But yeah, I think that answers that question. We can move on to the next one. From Bethany. Bethany says, Good afternoon. I am from a new church starting in Baltimore, Maryland. How do you all come about finding musicians to join your team? Since our church is new, I have a team, but I'm looking to definitely grow it. What should Bethany do, Spencer?
Well, shout out to Baltimore, Maryland. I'm up in Pennsylvania, right over the border, so I'm pretty close by. So good to see somebody so close by joining in from church front. How do you find musicians for your team? This is something that I've been wrestling with recently because it's the start of the new year, and one of my goals for our worship team is to kind of double up on each position. So that way people can take a Sunday off and not have to, we don't have to miss them because there's somebody else to fill their place. So this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And the number one thing that I always come back to, and it seems so simple, is to ask people. You've just got to ask people. Before the first of the year, I sat down and I just made a list of people that I could ask. So I wrote down probably 7 people's names in my church, and I lead in a church under 100 people. So maybe if your church is bigger than that, your list is going to be a little bit bigger, or if it's smaller, maybe you only have 2 people to ask. But that's where it starts. It starts with actually asking people if they want to join the team. And the only way you're going to know if they have musical ability is to get to know the people in your church. So that's one way, is to literally just go ask people. Sometimes we miss the most obvious step. Jake, what do you think about that?
Totally agree. Got to get out there and ask. People aren't magically just going to show up and start serving. So be proactive, and then find, in my previous church ministry context I've been in, what's been helpful is even identifying just younger musicians or aspiring musicians who I could help train and equip, and they were just really super excited about volunteering and being a part of the ministry. So that's one great place to look. Maybe if there's a college in your area, you could find people who, again, they're just earlier in their journey, so they're not going to be professionals, but they want to get experience. Of course, there's also the option, if your church has the budget for it, maybe you do stipend a drummer to serve for you on your team or something like that, if you absolutely need a drummer and you really value having a drummer. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many routes depending on, and it depends on what your context is like and what works best for your church. But I think the biggest thing is really what you said, Spencer, in terms of just be proactive.
Yeah, and you got to realize that it's not going to happen instantly either. But if you put in the work up front, it's going to pay off in the end, just like you talked about actually teaching people. I have 2 younger students that I've been teaching, and the one, she's been leading with us now for a year, but it took her 6 months to join our team. And then there's another kid who I've been teaching guitar to it's been a year and a half now, and he just started leading worship with me at the beginning of when we started our midweek, which is halfway through last year. So it takes a while, but it's worth it to teach people.
Yep, for sure. So let's move on to a question from the comments. So let's do 2 questions from the comments, and then we'll kind of see. You guys, it's so great to see you guys logging on. Actually, I've seen a lot of great questions here. So we've got, let's see, the first question: what's the best way to mic up an acoustic guitar? My recommendation is ideally get an acoustic guitar that has a direct output built into it, so you can plug it in directly. It's going to have the best sound, not necessarily quality, but for a worship leading environment, plugging in direct to a DI box into your system is going to give you the best results. If that's not an option, I would recommend some sort of dynamic microphone, like the Shure SM57 microphone. Really, what's nice about that is really focused on its pickup pattern, and it's not going to pick up a bunch of sound around your guitar. It's really just going to pick up what's right in front of it. So it's a basic instrument mic. Any other tips you have there, Spencer?
Yeah, I mean, if you were in a studio environment, you'd want to use a condenser mic, which a condenser mic picks up a bunch of sound, but you don't want that in a live setting, because if you pick up a bunch of sound, you're going to get a bunch of feedback. So definitely go with a dynamic mic, something that just picks up what's right in front of it. And the other part, as far as placement, is you don't want to, most people, whenever they mic an acoustic guitar, they think, well, the sound is coming out of the sound hole, so I should put the microphone right in front of the sound hole. But actually, actually where you want to put it. A good starting place is like around the 12th fret of the guitar, and like 6 inches back, maybe something around there, because that'll give you a more fuller sound. Whenever you listen to a guitar, you don't listen to it with your ear right up against the sound hole. You're back a little bit further, and you're hearing not just the sound hole, but you're actually hearing stuff further down the neck as well. So you want to make sure that you pick that up. And then from there, it's just trial and error, moving the mic where you think it should be depending on what you're hearing. So if it sounds really boomy, move it further away from the sound hole. If it sounds really thin, maybe move it closer to the sound hole.
Great. Awesome question. Next question comes from Jesse in the comments here. What's the best software, low cost, to play pads play pads using a Surface Pro and a MIDI keyboard? So thanks for asking that, Jesse from San Diego. I would recommend, and this is actually what we're using, we have a MacBook Air, but it will work on a Surface as well. I would get Ableton Live Intro. It's $99, and I really don't think you'd want to... I can't think of any other PC options that cost less than that. If anybody else can, just let Jesse know in the comments. But what works well for us is you can get Ableton Live Intro and then go to sundaysounds.com, get their Sunday Keys template for Ableton Live. It works on Intro and Standard. So we have some basic patches that our keyboard player can use off of that. We don't do a lot of extravagant stuff, but Ableton also makes it really easy to, if you just want to play back like droning ambient pads, Ableton makes that really easy to do, especially when you're in session view, and it will just kind of keep looping things for however long you need them, and you plug it into your MIDI piano controller or whatever you're using, and it just works within seconds. And Ableton is, in my opinion, the most stable live performance software out there. So as you kind of grow in the patches you use and in your setup, I think Ableton is probably the best ecosystem to use there. MainStage is another one, but that's only Mac-based. So, but Ableton will work on PC.
Fernando, that website was Sunday Sounds, Sounds, right, Jake?
Yep, sundaysounds.com. Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Let's go ahead and what's the next email submitted question we have, Spencer?
Let's see. We have from BKYOYT. I don't know if that's a person's name or if YT stands for YouTube, but this is their question. It says, can you use in-ear monitoring with an analog mixer? We're planning to use this feature for when we use multi-tracks.
Yes, you can use in-ear monitoring with analog mixer. So same concepts. With the analog mixer, you have auxiliary outputs on it usually, and a lot of people maybe are currently using floor wedges, and maybe you have 1 or 2 or 4 mixes going to your floor wedges on stage. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to switch it from going to floor wedges to going to maybe wired headphone amplifiers on stage, or maybe you could have wireless in-ear monitors. So yes, when I first started using in-ears, we had a big old analog board at the church I was at, and we were able to get it up and running. Of course, with a digital board will come the convenience of your musicians can control their mix from stage a lot easier, and it just makes it a lot more seamless of a process. So that's all I have to say about that. And it appears Spencer I've lost Spencer. Where'd you go, Spencer? All right, stand by. We will get this figured out. What's going on here? Skype. What's going on, Skype? Oh, my internet connection's poor. All right, let me hang up on Spencer, and then I'm going to call him back real quick. Troubleshooting tech on the fly here. All right, cool. Sorry about that, Spencer.
Is it your fault?
I didn't mean to get you booted off the call here. Let me see. Let me get him back here to get him back on the call or on the stream. So something funky with Skype right now, not pulling your video in there into the stream. All right, guys. Apologize for this pretty inconvenient technical difficulty. Let me try this. I'm going to quit Skype real quick, and then I'm going to call you back again. So I'm going to hang up. There we go. I think he's back.
Good.
Yes, I think we're back here in Ecamm. Now we know how to fix it. There you go, folks. Just quit Skype and start it over if you're trying to do this live streaming fancy thing that we're doing here. So, Spencer, I'm not sure where you cut out there, but I answered the question about doing in-ears on analog mixer and how you can do it. Let's go to the next question from Larry from the email question. Larry says, hey, you mentioned in the first video of your Ableton series to download the app Playback. Can you use Playback and Ableton simultaneously complementing each other, or is Ableton a more advanced software of what Playback does? So, well, that last statement he made, that is correct. Ableton is a more advanced software of what Playback does. Playback makes it very user-friendly and intuitive to get up and running with a click and tracks in your worship ministry. Really, really powerful app, and there's a lot of great advantages to it, especially because it's just so easy to use. What I was going to say, the Ableton Live can just you can do more with it. You can run a click, tracks, you can automate lyrics and lighting in worship. It's just more of a professional digital audio workstation that runs on a desktop or laptop computer. So, yes, I would say, I'd say no to your first question. That I don't think you would really. I can't think of a case where you would use them together. I mean, it's technically possible. You can get them communicating to each other over MIDI, but I don't really know any cases of anyone actually doing that. A lot of people start with Playback, and then maybe they'll transition to Ableton if they want more advanced controls and features. So let's hop back over into the comments section. So where's the next comment question we got?
I'm going to grab one that I saw.
Okay.
It says, we have about 2 hours of rehearsal time before service to go through 5 songs. What's the best way to utilize the time we have to rehearse well? This is from Pineapple Girl 123. I believe that's Lana. She follows me on Instagram, so shout out Lana. So
Awesome.
What do? You have 2 hours of rehearsal time to go through 5 songs. How would you spend it, Jake?
Yeah, I think 2 hours is a great amount of time. First of all, I go into it thinking rehearsal is rehearsal. It's not practice for the time for your band members to be learning the songs, right? So always emphasize to your band members that when they come to church for rehearsal, they should have already learned their parts at home, and now at rehearsal, we're just putting it together. So I would actually hope that we'd be done closer to like an hour and a half for this amount of time. But there's some other things we can talk about that you can do during that 2 hour time block. So, I mean, it's up to your personal preference and how you want to lead your team. It's great when people show up to rehearsal to obviously just be friendly, welcome your team, make sure everybody's getting set up, everybody's getting ready to go. Once everybody is, I like to start off with a prayer. Just ask God to help us through rehearsal and help us to remember what we learned. And then I like to do a sound check for the first song or two, make sure everything's working properly, get everybody's ears are dialed in. And basically kind of the general overview of my rehearsals are, let's run through the whole set list once, and kind of depends on how many new songs we have. Usually I'm not introducing more than one new song, so maybe that new song we do introduce, though, we might play it a couple times when we first hit it. But I like running through all the songs once, really identifying trouble spots, and then troubleshooting those trouble spots, like if they really need help. Or sometimes you can just tell your band member hey, just tweak that a little bit and not have to run through it. Again, really depends on where your team's at with these types of things. And then I like to run through everything a second time, and also really hone in on getting those transitions right between songs, because that's often overlooked. So really practice those transitions. I'm trying to say, again, if there's a newer song, give it more attention. But yeah, I could go on for a long time about this. But what what's your kind of philosophy or approach
Well,
to it?
remind me again, Jake, do you just practice on Sunday mornings? You don't have practice throughout the week?
Correct. We practice on Sunday mornings. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because our team's a little bit differently, so we utilize our time on Sunday mornings a bit differently. We have rehearsals on Thursday nights, and we do 6 songs in a service, so it's basically about the same amount of time. And for us to go through 6 songs during our first rehearsal, which is on Thursday night, it probably takes, we go from 6:30 to 7:45. So that's like an hour and 15 minutes, right? If I did the math right. And that includes other stuff too. So probably in all, it's only about an hour to do 6 songs. But my team also knows that, like you said, the expectation is that they come in with their parts ready and learned, and like they might need to figure out how their part works with another person's part, but they aren't standing there learning their part at practice, which I think is really where a lot of the time suck comes whenever it comes to rehearsal, is people having to learn their part. So yeah, like you said, you want to hammer that and make sure that that's what's happening. Then on Sunday mornings, we meet and we just do a quick run through of all the songs, making sure all the transitions are good and stuff too. So that's how we spend it. I don't see for 5 songs, if people come with their parts learned, I don't think that should take 2 hours. So you really got to set that expectation. But what are some other things that you could do within that 2-hour amount of time, Jake? Like if you have 2 hours and you want to use it really well, apart from running through songs.
Yeah, a lot of worship ministries I know like to have kind of a small group-ish vibe to their worship band and have set aside time for like a devotional time, prayer time, group prayer. Like that's actually one thing I remember we did at one church where we practiced on Sunday morning, but there was a traditional service going on and we kind of had some time to kill before we actually had to play the contemporary service. So we had a good like half hour where we could really just gather together in prayer and relax. And it was really powerful because we could pray for each other. We could pray for the service. Sometimes we actually had time to go run down to Starbucks down the road, grab coffee. Really helped. I really feel like that helped out the communal vibe of our team. So that's another thing you could do during that time slot.
Yeah, and what was the content of that like devotional small group time? Did you do a Bible study or what?
No, it was very like, and honestly, now I would even, at that church in particular, wouldn't call it as much of a devotional. It was more just kind of a prayer huddle time. Like we had a place where we could sit around like a coffee table on couches and really just share prayer requests and pray afterwards. So wasn't super extended time or formal or anything like that.
Yeah. For me, we have like a devotional time at our Thursday rehearsals. And what I see a lot of worship teams doing is they just sort of use that as a glorified Bible study time. Like it could be for anyone. Like anybody could walk in and be a part of it, which isn't always a bad thing. But my expectation for our worship team is that they're involved with things outside of just the worship team. So I don't just want to have a Bible study at worship rehearsal. I want to give them things that are specific to who they are, because we're leading a specific group of people. We're leading the worship team. So I'll often talk about worship, or we'll go over some training that they need to know that will help them lead worship better. So that's something to keep in mind with your time too. If you have 2 hours and it takes you 45 minutes to run through 5 songs, consider how can I set my team up for success in the future.
Yeah. Great tips there. And then another question from the comments comes from Justin. He says, leading worship in 2 weeks with our youth group. I'm 15 years old, play guitar. I'm from Germany. And how can I overcome my fear of just being kind of ashamed of my voice and singing in front of people? Mm-hmm. Justin, I would just encourage you to keep at it, keep practicing, keep working on it, ask people for feedback. You could also seek out some vocal training and help. You get private voice lessons, especially when you're 15. Your voice is doing a lot of crazy things at that age, and that's about when I started singing too. And I'm 30 years old now. I finally feel like my voice is like kind of like matured and like falling into its place of like where singing is just much more comfortable and enjoyable than it used to be. So yeah, I would just persist at it. If you're afraid of something, it's probably a good sign that you should do it and should push yourself to try it out.
Yeah, I was the same way. I think I started singing in church around 15, and I was not a very good singer. And the only way to get better at it is to do it, and not just do it in private in your bedroom while you're sitting on your bed playing the guitar. Like, you've got to get out there and do it in front of people, because then you have the pressure of, okay, I actually need to improve. It's the same way with guitar playing or really any instrument. If you're just afraid to play it in front of people, you're not really going to get better, because there isn't that healthy amount of pressure on you. Like, I'm going to be in front of people, so I need to get better at this so it's acceptable. And it isn't distracting when I lead people. So the only way to do it, or the only way to get better, is to do it over and over again. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Nobody's the best whenever they first start, and that's okay. The only way to get better is to keep doing it.
The next question we have from John, submitted by email. He asks, as a worship leader in a small church around 100 members, I often find myself leading with no team to back me up. My question is, in larger churches, do you ever strip down your Sunday worship services to just the guitar, voice, and Holy Spirit? And if you were to do so, how do you scale back the lights and media portion of the service to match? Spencer, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I know that you and I both lead in small church contexts as well. So have you led in a large, quote unquote, large church before, Jake?
No, nothing over like 500 people. So right. I would say, but I've been in contexts where it's been like a mega church. Let's say like Red Rocks. Right. Like they do, like once in a while at Red Rocks Church, they do a weekend of worship where it's very stripped down, acoustic, guitar, maybe some light pads, and the voices, and yeah, it's awesome. Like I think any styles really work really well. So it's totally able. You're totally able to do that. And then his question about like how do you scale back lights and media, obviously just make it simpler, more minimal, not busy. You don't want to have a bunch of flashing lights and stuff. So really just kind of keep your lighting scenes maybe just one look per song, or even for a whole set. I would say minimalism is probably the key there to kind of keep that vibe more appropriate if you want to do a more stripped down, simple set.
Right. You want the visuals to match the audio. Yeah. I think of, I'm a big David Crowder fan, and I go to see him basically like every tour that he's on, and he always does a song where him and his band, like David Crowder, they've got a ton of tech and a bunch of stuff going on and flashing lights and fog and all that. But whenever they just come out to the front of the stage and they only have one microphone and they all crowd around it, I'm trying to think back to what the lighting's like, for example. I'm pretty sure it's just flat lighting. They just bring the stage lights up. There's nothing moving around. So that's how I would do it if you're used to leading in a large church and then you're trying to strip it down. Just have flat lighting. Keep it as simple as possible.
Yep. You want to read the next email question for us?
Yes. Andrew says, hey, Jake, how do you approach leading people who are older than you when they don't accept your leadership or show respect?
Okay, great question. And I think this is a common one if a lot of worship leaders are younger. I think I don't know what the actual stats are, but just knowing the stats in my channel, and a lot of you guys or gals, like it's like maybe like 5% gals who subscribe to the channel, but it's mostly folks in that like mid-20s to early 30s range. And I've experienced times where I lead bands with people who could be my parents or maybe even my grandparents, and there's definitely some interesting dynamics there. My best solution to this problem is always get to know them and establish a relationship with them first. So that means taking them to lunch and or asking them if you come visit them at their house and asking them questions about their life and not feeling like you have to preach to them or you have to be their pastor, but let them do most of the talking and just be willing to listen and learn from them. And once you do that, when you do that with anybody, they trust you more. they like you more, hopefully. And I think it's going to be much easier for you to lead them. They're going to want to follow you. People go with leaders they know. That's a little handy rhyme for you guys to remember. So always just pursue relationships, whether they're older than you, whether they're younger than you. But I think especially when they're older than you, that'll help, because maybe people who are younger, they may just follow you because you're older and they think you know what you're doing. But with older people, yeah, it's like a little bit more skeptical, I think, following folks who could be their kids. So
Yeah, I definitely. What do we have? We have 5 people on our worship team. 3 of them are older than me. And before that, whenever at the last church I led whenever I was 16, and everybody on the team was older than me, and I was in charge of them. So, speaking from experience, do what you do really well. Like, you've got to be prepared for rehearsals. Make sure people know that you have a plan. And then the other side of it is, like, whenever we are leaders, sometimes we try to speak from authority and like enforce what we want on other people. And if you're younger, that doesn't really work so well, because people, they don't want to follow like an authority that's younger than them. So you have to sort of lead from a different place, which would be knowledge or something like that. Like, I know a lot, and it's not an arrogant way either, but I know what I'm doing. So be confident in that, and like explain really well, this is where we want to be at, this is how we're going to get there. And people can rally behind that more than they're going to rally behind whenever I was 16, a 16-year-old leader leading 40 to 50-year-olds. So rally them behind a vision. Make sure that you are vision casting regularly, telling them where you envision the team in 6 months from now and how you're going to get there.
All right, let's head back on over to the YouTube comments. Boyd Sigler asks, what if you have a board and all the right equipment, but you don't have a sound person? Okay, solution number 1. Let's say you have all the equipment and it's Sunday and you're ready to go. You don't have a sound person. Then you'd really just have to kind of, it'd be a guessing game, right, of setting it up and kind of dialing it in the best of what you think the parameters should be like from the front of house mix, and then just hoping it's going to work out. But that's not a really good long-term solution. Find someone who can at least can be a volunteer and is interested in this stuff. There has to be someone in your church who would be interested in learning how to run a soundboard. Like Spencer said earlier today about recruiting people, you have to be proactive and just ask. And then being a sound engineer, I think, is the most difficult job in all of worship ministry, even harder than leading worship sometimes, because everything goes through that sound console, and if that person doesn't know what they're doing, like that, you could have a $50,000 Digico sound console and it sound horrible if the person operating doesn't know how to do it. So be willing to invest into your volunteers and training them. Or another option too, we do this at our church, is we actually contract sound engineers to help us out and come in. And it really depends on the person's experience and how long they've been doing it, how much they get paid. But even if you could offer a $50 or $100 a week stipend to someone who knows sound, they do a good job, to me it's totally worth it, because again, I think poor sound can really ruin a good band. And a good sound guy can make a not so good band or a mediocre band sound pretty good. So any other thoughts on that one, Spencer?
Yeah, I think it's all about training people up. That's one of the areas in my church that I've had the most success with getting people plugged in, because that and tech, because like running sound is definitely a skill. But at the same time, having someone there who can do the basics, like unmute a channel or set levels, which I think are all things that you can teach somebody over time. I think that's still more valuable than not having anyone at all. Like, most of the time people aren't going to feel comfortable whenever they're just starting running sound, like messing with things that are actually going to make it not sound very good. So just let them know, here's the expectation. Whenever the pastor comes up to preach, I want you to unmute the mic. Whenever the band comes up, just make sure that things are unmuted. Keep the levels like balanced where you think they should be. And most of the time, you can train people in the basics. Now, they aren't going to do EQ and reverb and compression yet, but they'll get a basic mix, which is better than you just running from the stage to the sound mixer trying to do it yourself. So definitely train people.
Awesome. Is there another question from the comments you'd like to address, Spencer?
Let me look.
Here, I got one, actually. I beat you to it.
Right.
Frank asked a good question. I lead worship solo with acoustic guitar. What is a subtle way to incorporate Ableton like on my own, maybe with pads? It's a great way to do this. All you need is your laptop that's going to be running Ableton. And even at this level of a more kind of subtle way of running it, you can use Ableton Live Intro. And so you'll need that on the computer. And then you'll need whatever gear you want to use to plug your computer into your sound system. And then you can run pads in Session View. This is like the only time I like using Session View in Ableton Live. But if you want to run just ambient pads and a click from Ableton, you can easily do that. I actually have a video on that. If you search on YouTube, how to play ambient pads and a click in Ableton, something like that. Just search that. I'm pretty sure it'll show up first. I'll show you step by step how to do that. We have free church front pads you can use to get up and running with that. But what's cool is you'll be able to create a set list of songs, and each song will be in the right tempo with a click, and the click will only go to your in-ear monitors, and then the song will also have, or each song will be in the right key for whatever key the pads are in. And I'll even show you tricks in that video how to make smooth transitions so the pads cross-fade into each other when you change songs. And you don't necessarily need the click if you don't have any of your monitors. Like, you can still just use Ableton to be your pads playback machine, basically. But yeah, that's how I would go about setting that up.
Yeah. Another question I saw, this is from Cam Got a Fro. That is the name, as in an afro, I assume. I was going to make my name, instead of leading worship well, Spencer Got a Fro, but then I realized I don't have any hair, so that didn't really work out. I had to go with leading worship well instead. They ask, though, what are some ways that you personally build community through your worship team? And I was thinking about that while you were answering the last question. And I feel like my worship team is really healthy because they spend a lot of time together. But at the same time, I don't know if I've done anything intentionally to build that, because I lead in a small church and everybody on the worship team is really involved with other things in the church, which is kind of why I've set that expectation. Because I know a lot of people have like community nights for their worship team, but everybody in my worship team, they basically come to everything at our church that's already happening. So we're just by nature always together. So I don't know if I do anything personally that's like strategic in building community other than, at rehearsal we check in with each other and we're just hanging out basically. What do you do, Jake, to build community in your worship team?
To build community, there's we kind of talked about this earlier, of taking advantage of time during rehearsal for the time to just, again, do simple things like do life updates with each other. Just ask, like, hey, what's new with you? Like, I've actually been a part of that when I would volunteer at Red Rocks Church in their band. They would have what's called family time, and we would just get in a circle and share, like, hey, what's going on in your life? And that was just a cool way to make it so the people you played with weren't strangers. It's fun to do fun events. Like, just go do fun stuff. Like, we have Top Golf here that I went and hung out with some of our setup and media production guys, and it's cool because Top Golf's like bowling but golf, and you can just hang out and chat and get to know each other. So I just encourage keeping it simple. Like, make friends with your team like you would pretty much any other friends. Invite them over to your house. I think that's also one of the most powerful things you can do. My wife and I love having people over, and we've built a lot of great relationships with worship team members and other people at church by doing that.
Yeah. Should we get back to an email question?
Yeah,
here?
let's go back to the email question.
All right. This is from 2. He says, how does your church start its service from start to end? And he says, including background information. I'm not 100% sure what that means. Let's go with that one first. Then he asks another question.
Okay. Yeah. So I think he's asking. So I'll just explain because I think I know what he's asking. So for us, we have Pro Presenter, which runs all of our video, media, even our background music we play, like our music before the service. We play the Bethel Without Words playlist, so it's kind of like I like it. I wish they'd actually they have another album like that too, a newer one. I wish more worship bands would make these like instrumental synth ambient albums because I think they work really great as like pre-service music. Then at 5 minutes to go, we have a 5-minute countdown, and we're playing like some Hillsong United background music in that video. It's kind of more energetic. The countdown hits 0. That's when I hit song 1 on Ableton. It blacks out stage lights. It dims the house lights. It blacks out the screen, and then from there everything gets queued up. So that's how we start. At the beginning of the service, really seamless, and at the end of the service. Basically, we do our last song. Our pastor comes up. We're kind of looping pad and click at the end of the service or end of that song. So whatever key and tempo that last song was, we just kind of keep looping that. The pastor comes up and he has like a 30-second dismissal. And then when he's like, hey, thank you for coming, that's my cue to hit the postlude cue on my pedal. And that cues up. Usually we tag like the last bridge or last chorus of the last song. And that'll automatically bring up the house lights, turn off the stage lights, throw our logo or whatever we want to put on the screen, and that's how we end the service. So, and he asked, do we use PowerPoint? No, we use Pro Presenter because it's just Pro Presenter is a billion times better for this stuff than PowerPoint is.
Yeah, ours is pretty similar to yours. We start with a countdown 5 minutes before, and once that countdown's over, our sound and lighting guy brings the stage lights up. We go through our service. At the end, we pray and say, and all God's people said, Amen. And then the lights come down and more music comes on after that. So, I mean, I feel like that's pretty standard. You said you play a tag of a song after your pastor wraps things up. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and it's just instrumental. So we just play just instrumental, and we're not expecting people to sing. Like everybody knows, the house lights come on and they're walking out.
And then the song just stops, and then other music comes on.
Yeah, once it stops, then we'll cue up that pre-service music again.
Okay.
Yep. Cool. The next question we had by email was from Daniel. How do you deal with songs that include an octave jump from the vocals? This is often not possible for the congregation and takes away from their ability to sing, but not doing it often hinders the energy and dynamics of the song. I think this question could fall into a bigger discussion about just picking the right keys for your congregation. I think maybe there's some songs that just aren't really well written, that maybe you just don't do those songs if their vocal range is like insane and it's uncomfortable for you as a leader to sing it, and then of course it's going to be uncomfortable for your congregation. But in this case, like maybe some songs have like a little part of it where you have that octave jump. The first one that comes to mind, we just sang it this past week at our church, The Passion. It's one of the newer ones by Hillsong Worship. And in the bridge, like it's mostly a female-led song, but at the end of the bridge, like the male part jumps up the octave, and it's pretty high. Like I give my whole life to honor this love. I mean, it's like whatever key in it, it's like a lot higher than that. And of course, like, I don't know, I don't expect the guys in the room to sing along with me there. I think by that point, they've picked up the melody, and I was even singing at the time before that of like the octave below, and then maybe they can just keep singing that. So I think most people can intuit I can just sing the octave low still, even though the worship leaders are singing high. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Spencer?
I think that's true. Yeah, I think most people will just stay down the octave. I think practically there's two things that I can think of when it comes to octave jumps. If you want to do a song with an octave jump, the first one is to just move the key to somewhere where you don't need to have the octave jump. Like whenever there's an octave jump, usually if you're trying to put it in a singable key, that octave down is going to be lower than you'd want to have it, so that you can fit the octave up into a singable key. Or the other way is if you want to bring that low part up, that's going to bring the whole song up, so that whenever you jump the octave, it's going to be too high. So the best way to do that is to find a middle ground, and then you just don't jump the octave. And you do miss out on some of the energy and the dynamics of that song. But if you pick an appropriate key where it's like somewhere in between, where you don't have to jump the octave, I feel like it still works out fine. The other thing that you can do is you can have a male vocalist or a female vocalist, whatever works, sing down the octave and then switch to the other vocalist whenever it goes up. And I just feel like something happens there where, I don't know, people still sing along because something changes, and I don't know if it's like a distraction where they're like, well, somebody else is singing now, so I'm going to keep singing with them. I don't know, but I've done that. We do that a lot where we have a female vocalist start out because we have an alto in our worship team, so she'll sing the low part, and then once we jump up the octave, one of the guys who is a tenor starts singing the other part. So that's something to think about too. That way you still get some differentiation between the different parts without, I don't know, alienating people with the octave jump.
Yeah, great. Let's move on to some of the YouTube comments. Fernando asks, do you think musicians are intimidated by Ableton Live and multi-tracks? Like, I think at our church there are a few musicians that haven't auditioned for the ministry, and I wonder if it's because of it. Yes, I think people are intimidated by it, and I think it's sad. I don't know. I think when they think of these tools, they think of the professionalism that kind of comes along with it, and they're like, I'm not like adequate to play to that standard. So they just kind of, they're afraid of it and they shy away from it. But our job as worship leaders is to show them like, no, this is actually a great tool, even for beginner instrumentalists and musicians. I think I would actually be a much better musician today if I would have started playing with a click and backing tracks a long time ago. So I think it's really just a mindset issue. We need to be better at communicating to our team members that it's not scary. It's really going to help us out. It's going to make your life easier. And as worship leaders too, we need to really be familiar with the tools and know what we're doing with them, so that during rehearsal or Sunday, things aren't going haywire on us and we don't know how to run it. So really know your stuff so you can really help equip and provide your team with support.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that people feel intimidated by, not just Ableton and clicks. Like, for example, my team doesn't use music on stage. Like, we don't have music stands. We expect people to memorize the music. That's intimidating. But at the end of the day, we also know that it's for the betterment of like what we're doing. Like, whenever you have your music memorized, you're able to engage more in worship because you're not worried about what the next chord is. And the same thing with a click track. Like, whenever you're not worried about the tempo because you've got that locked into your head, your team's better for that. They're able to lead in a different way that they wouldn't be able to if they didn't have that. So I think there's always going to be things that are intimidating, and you just got to show people, like, talk them through what the benefits of it are and do that clearly.
I think we got time for one more question from the YouTube comments, so I'll let you take your pick, Spencer. All right.
I saw one here that I wanted. Now I lost it. This is from Anthony. He says, how do you get people to come on time, or better yet, a few minutes early to tune instruments and set up? Also, how do you handle noodling when people are being helped? So how do you get people to come on time? Let's talk about that first. And I think I'll start off with this and then I'll let you answer, Jake. I think you have to show that you respect people's time, like take an honest assessment. I always talk about this, that it's easy to place the blame on other people, and sometimes it is their fault. Sometimes they aren't responsible, but sometimes the fault is ours because we don't respect their time. So think back to your rehearsals. Like, if you said you're going to start rehearsal at 6:30 and you haven't started until 6:40, and then people start showing up late, like that's probably on you because you've shown them that the first 10 minutes of rehearsal aren't really important because you're not starting on time. And then the same thing with ending on time too. I think that plays into it. Do you have an ending time for your rehearsals? Because they'll still feel like you don't value their time. What do you think on that, Jake?
I think you hit the main issue there of showing them that their time is not going to be wasted when they don't show up, because we got to step back and think about, okay, why do people persistently show up late? And that could be a really common issue, like you said, of like maybe they've shown up on time before, but it's not until like 20 minutes into rehearsal start time that you actually start rehearsing, because everybody's troubleshooting gear and equipment. You're trying to print out chord charts and all that stuff. So really respect their time. Be abundantly clear in your communication as well, and make sure like they know like, hey, rehearsal is starting at this time. Use Planning Center to be able to send out notifications to them to make sure they know when rehearsal's coming up, and reminders so they know, oh, hey, tomorrow I'm serving. So you can eliminate those cases where people sort of just completely forget when they're supposed to show up to that. So I need to go to Skype real quick here and get Spencer on the call so we can kind of close this out. So I apologize. I need to get like better internet or something like this in my office to troubleshoot this issue. Let me quit Skype real quick, get this figured out. Skype, sorry, here. But really appreciate you guys' questions, and Spencer and I are wanting to do this Q&A on a more regular basis this year. And yeah, we just really find it just really valuable getting to know you guys and some of the things you're working on. So Spencer, I got you back in the live stream here, and we're really just wrapping things up at this point and explaining like we want to do these Q&As on a more regular basis. So we will hopefully come out with a regular day of when we're going to be doing these, but feel free if you want to email us any questions or DM us any questions. We're going to try to compile these into one document where we're going to be able to have these pre-written questions, but then of course just show up here on the chat and we'll be able to work through your questions here live on the spot. Spencer, do you have any or what resources do you have available to folks here right now before we sign off?
Yeah, well, you can follow me over on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active. If you just look for Leading Worship Well, you'll find me there. Also, I have a Facebook page where I post the same stuff to that. So if you're only on Facebook and you're not on Instagram, you can still follow me on Facebook, still get all of the posts. And if you don't know what I do, once again, I just post a practical worship leading tip every single day. So I'm actually almost at the 1 year mark where I've posted a practical worship leading tip every single day. That's what I made the commitment to do, post one every day for a year. So I'm about 12 days away from that. So I'm pretty excited about when I reach the end of that, getting to celebrate that and thinking about what the future looks like. Also, I have a free audio training, which you can download if you just head to leadingworshipwell.com. That's my website. You can learn 5 tips to instantly improve your worship leading. So definitely check that out, leadingworshipwell.com.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Spencer, for all you're doing, helping out with answering questions here too today on the stream. I want to encourage you guys a couple things. First, subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any future streams, as well as just the content that we're posting here regularly. That goes for you guys listening to this on the podcast. Make sure you're over here on YouTube. I know podcasting is great and you can listen to things kind of passively, but you can see lots of video content as well, and lots of videos on this channel that show you a lot of what we've been talking about during this stream. You can head on over to worshipleaderschool.com. As I mentioned on the top of this website, it's a membership site for worship leaders. We got a course library that's going to walk you through step-by-step trainings to help you grow as a worship leader and to build your team. We also have a community forum there where we have worship leaders from all over the globe who are part of Worship Leader School, getting to know each other, asking questions, receiving help and feedback. And then I'm hosting regular office hours every week here from my office. Like I actually have a session coming up very soon here in like a few minutes. That I gotta hop off and help some students out in a few minutes. But anyways, that's worshipleaderschool.com. So go to that website. You can learn more about it, and you can join today. So go check that out. And with that said, that wraps up today's session. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you all so much for being subscribers and listening or watching from wherever you're from. And keep up the great work in your ministry.